Hello and welcome to the ServiceDucks podcast. I am co-host James Downs.
And I'm Rush here, and we're here to chat about all things ServiceNow, everyday life as a ServiceNow consultant, new features, implementation successes, and perhaps more entertaining when it doesn't go quite so well.
Welcome back to the ServiceDucks podcast. Russ, so what have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to? I have, I'm assuming I can say anything, it doesn't have to be ServiceNow related.
No, anything at all.
I've been to London, and the highlight of my week is I went into Waterloo Station, and I don't know if you've seen these, but in London you can now rent those scooters, electric scooters.
Ooh.
So, and this is genuinely the highlight of my week, and I love telling my kids when I got home. But come out of Waterloo Station, there's like a parking bay, and you use an app. I think it was Lime. Other scooter providers are available, by the way. But you can scan your app, you do your ID, and you get an electric scooter, and you can whiz around London. So that's what I did this week. Highly recommend. The other thing I haven't done this week, but I'm going to do. So tomorrow's Saturday, and I am doing a race. I've got a running race coming up.
Very nice. What sort of distance?
That is a 10k race. I am thoroughly unprepared, and it's going to be cold, wet, and windy. So I'm expecting a good one, but yeah.
Yeah, see, that turns off most people, doesn't it, when you talk about running outside? I think anytime I see any bad weather, I'm definitely a fair weather runner myself. Yeah,
no, it's more of a mental game, absolutely. But yeah, that's the plan for me, so that's something I've done and something I'm going to do. But yeah, what about you? What have you been up to?
This week, a couple of interesting things. So, off the back end of last week, we finished off a really cool hackathon. So, I led a team into
I remember you saying, yes,
developing a solution to fight the transport emissions in Sofia in Bulgaria. So, something completely different. And, you know, using ServiceNow, we're able to come up with a solution to come back to people to say, hey, for this particular journey, you're going to use up this particular emissions and the air quality is this. So it was a really good experience. Learned lots along the way. It was the first hackathon I've actually been a member of anyway, so that was pretty interesting. We had our final on Friday, last Friday.
You made the final?
We made the final. I'd like to say there was over 100 applicants, but I don't know. There was only 15 teams that made the final. We made the final.
Right.
But the biggest issue on the final was that everything was being speaking in Bulgarian. So obviously we had no idea what was going on. I don't know what the winning entrance
Bulgarian
was.
Just for the final.
No, absolutely not. That wasn't part of our solution. So yeah, no, it was interesting. We didn't make the top 3, unfortunately. So there was no prize. But either way, the team learned lots of things along the way.
Yeah, it's still a good experience though.
Absolutely, and actually something internal in our organisation, we're looking to build up a lot more hackathons to just help the learning process for some of our junior members as well.
They're good fun. They're good fun.
Brings people together.
Here's the key question. Would you recommend it to a friend?
Doing a hackathon?
What do you think I was asking? It's like that question they used to have about, I don't know if you've seen this on LinkedIn, about a browser. And the question is, would you recommend this web browser to a friend? And someone said, I need you to understand that people don't go around talking about web browsers. No, it was operating systems, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I won't recommend an operating system to a friend.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was definitely a fun experience. It's out of the ordinary, it's not a usual sort of like project. So you get all together, you plan these things out, and if you win, you win. If you don't, then it's just a good learning experience all round. So 100%.
Yeah, that's good. I'm jealous. That beats my scooter story.
I quite like your scooter story because I've seen those in only the likes of Tenerife and places like that. We can just scooter down the shore, but I didn't even realise that.
I hadn't told you about that either. I saved it for the podcast, didn't I?
Surprised me. I like it.
Okay. So anyway, enough waffle. People have come here to listen to us talk about ServiceNow stuff.
Yes.
So I suppose we best get on topic. So what are we talking about this time? What are we talking about?
This time we're just talking about our journeys. So how we actually made it, how we got to where we are today in the profession that we love.
Okay, so our ServiceNow journeys, how we went from start to now. I get you. Okay, so why don't you kick us off? What about you? How did you start? Where are you? And what lessons have you got for people?
So my role today is a advisor solution architect. So basically I provide technical design and oversight for our more complex enterprise customers. I work a lot with the pre-sales teams on large deals, but essentially ensure that our customers get value from the platform is basically my job. But how I got here was basically my journey started by working on help desks. All the way in the Highlands of Scotland. That's where I grew up. You probably can't tell from my accent whatsoever. But that's where I started.
How many service desks were there in the Highlands?
There wasn't many IT companies. No. So I think everyone kind of worked for the same company. So anyone that I went to university with was all went the same way. It was everyone's first job, basically.
Right, okay.
But yeah, no, all of my kind of working habits came from there. So, it was incredibly busy. You had to have a good kind of like, hard-working ethos to be able to work there. But it gives you all the kind of perspectives, and you're working and, resetting passwords for the likes of coal miners and, random people, like the everyday people.
Everyone loves a password reset.
Oh, yes. So I worked up from there, basically. I worked from help desk to help desk and supported different people and the NHS as well. But I eventually found my way into ITSM consulting, doing on-premise installs and general, running process workshops, gathering requirements.
A natural progression from service desk, do you think?
I think so.
Why didn't you?
Into the likes of application support, which was a bit more technical.
Okay, because you can either go infrastructure or kind of software. Well, you're on the service desk, and not 9 times out of 10, but you've got those two avenues, really, haven't you? Others are
you can go into, of course. Yes, you can go more technical and go into more like desktop side support or networks and that sort of thing. I wasn't particularly interested in that very much. It wasn't actually where the money was for me at the time either. So learning about this kind of avenue of consultancy, and I liked working with people as well, customers. So, working in that kind of consulting environment where you're there face to face and get to experience things with the customers. And you get to have that sense of where they've found your time valuable, which makes you feel good, obviously. So this is where my consulting experience started from into ITSM, and where I eventually moved across to Fruition Partners in 2015.
Was it Fruition Partners though?
Yes,
it was
literally yeah. What was it called before Fruition Partners?
What was it called? Drop a comment in the comments below, if there are comments below. If not, then send an email in.
But it was literally right after the takeover.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was one of the first people to join Fruition Partners as Fruition Partners in the UK. But yes, I worked my way up from there, basically.
And that's where... Sorry, I keep interrupting. I need to let you talk, don't I? But that's where I first met you, wasn't it? In the Fruition Partners.
It was indeed. Yeah, you were a customer, and I turned up at site to meet you to implement your discovery.
You did do discovery. More on that in another podcast. I feel that coming. How did James and Russ meet?
Oh,
yes.
Love story.
Right.
Anyway, yes, Dublin was actually the first release I worked on, which seems like an absolute age. There you go. You look at it back now and you're like, oh my God, is that really what it looked like? But I joined with, no scripting skills at all. I came to Fruition Partners as a process consultant with just, ITSM core process skills to be able to run workshops. I didn't know ServiceNow. I wasn't an admin. So I just came to it just as to be able to, get requirements and learn on the job, essentially. So as a junior consultant.
So I just want to pick on that there, and it might be interesting for people listening here. Is you come from a service desk background, and you've gone for an interview at Fruition, and you come in from a process point of view, specifically around ServiceNow. How did that interview play out? How did that conversation go? I'm guessing it was a lot different than happens now, right?
Yeah, very much so. It was very much the questions were centered around ITIL. everything was around ITIL. Everything was
Mhm.
around ITIL, implementations and things like that. That's what 90% of our work was back then. So the
Mhm.
question was more around, what would you advise if an incident was escalating and things like that. It was very much around best practice around ITIL v3. And I, of course, can answer those questions straight off the bat. And, it wasn't ServiceNow specific, so I couldn't say this is how you would do it in ServiceNow. I would say this is best practice, and that was exactly what they were looking for at that particular point of time. They wanted people to be the experts of this is what the process is, so you adapt to the process rather than, anything that is not best practice.
Absolutely. I think nowadays there's an element of ServiceNow questioning, isn't there, in the interviewing technique when it comes to process consultants or BPCs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So essentially, I worked my way up from being a process consultant up to moving across to the technical teams. Once I found out I was a little bit technical and had that bit of a background, I could just hone in on those skills. And as you said before, where we met, you're doing ITOM, so I was pigeonholed into doing ITOM discovery implementations.
That's such a funny term, pigeonholed.
Pigeon. We should say that. Pigeonholed. Can you spell out my pigeonhole, please?
Say that out loud.
I'm glad I got this.
If anyone knows,
mic.
if anyone knows where that comes from, and of course,
yes,
email
we need
in.
the origins.
We need the answer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, I've obviously worked my way up from there. So just through pure grit, determination, and going back to what I said right at the beginning about having that hard-working background and being able to work with customers and get good feedback from customers, that's how I've been able to propel myself up into the obviously the higher roles, doing senior technical consultant and then eventually architect.
Okay, so if and that's hopefully it is to me an interesting journey you've been on there, and there's some key learnings I think to take away for anyone that's listening. I'm going to put you on the spot. 3 things, right? What 3 learnings? If the people listening to this and say, right, okay, this is James's journey. How do I replicate that? Or what did he learn? Or what mistakes did he make along the way that he would go back and change? So what 3 things, if I ask you, what's your advice as a veteran in the ServiceNow space for me? You're allowed 3 things.
So the 3 things I would suggest is obviously knowing which role that you're applying for, because at that time I was applying for a process consultant.
Yeah.
So the fact was at that point is I knew what I was getting in for. So my prep for the likes of the interview was purely around knowing best practice around ITIL.
Okay.
Nowadays, like you've mentioned before, it's completely different. It's not just IT anymore. It's grown a lot further beyond that. You have to know the best practice around HR and ITOM, and so that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is all about personality and you and how you come across to the likes of customers and
Me?
how you communicate. Yes, you specifically.
Me?
How Russ comes across to people is how you should talk. What you should talk about in interviews.
Yeah, we'll edit that bit out.
Communication is obviously extremely important, and for you to be able to sit in front of customers and have difficult conversations is important. So, purely just working on those communication skills is going to be essential for any ServiceNow role, I believe.
That's interesting. Soft skills. Okay, and your third and final bit of advice / imparting of knowledge.
And this is where I went wrong, right? So I should have absolutely have done more prep in terms of understanding both fruition partners, the business, as well as ServiceNow. So I did not do anywhere near enough preparation about just understanding them as businesses, where they are today, where they're going to, understanding the tool sets. There is more than enough capabilities at the moment for you to kind of spin up your own personal development instance to have a play and to understand it. And there's enough, now learning documentation out there that you can build these skills up before you actually go for an interview. I didn't do that, and I went wrong.
That's interesting. That tells a story, I think, because that is essentially what we're saying is when you did land the gig, there were times when you were put on the spot and perhaps weren't necessarily 100% prepared, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I was chucked straight on an
We've all been
admin
there.
course because I knew nothing.
Yeah. We've all been there. I think I remember one of my first consultancy projects. I was asked to do resource management. I'd never done resource management before in my life, and it was my second day in the job. But I managed to get through it, and the customer was happy.
The fact that ServiceNow is so vast right now, there's no way possible you could know absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And you could land any particular gig, and you have to have that kind of mentality of being able to prep for these projects that are coming up. So that's a skill in itself.
Yeah, that's some good.
So that's me. I guess we should turn the tides here and just look at your journey. Are you able to give some kind of summary? Yes, please.
So where am I now? So I am currently an independent contractor. That means I work for myself. It's nice. But I work on behalf of different partners and for different customers, right? So I'm a technical consultant, I should say. So technical architect, lead, more of a technical capacity, I'd say. So that's where I'm at right now. So I cover multiple roles there.
Yeah.
Where did I start? So I start like you. This is interesting, actually. So like you, I start from a service desk background. And you're going to have to keep me on track here and keep me to time because I'm going to go off on a tangent. So I'm relying on you. But I started off on the service desk, and I remember that, actually. I begged and pleaded the recruitment agent. I was doing sales jobs up until then. And I was kind of in a rut, didn't really know what I wanted to do. This is my 20s, a bit bored, a bit miserable. Still am, arguably. But I begged and pleaded. I wanted to go into the IT industry. So I begged and pleaded this recruitment agents who got me a job as a service desk agent. So I joined CityLink, who are no longer here anymore, but I joined as a service desk agent, and I just worked really hard. I didn't have an IT background. In the interview, I didn't know what I was saying, but I certainly didn't have a degree. Absolutely no degree in computing, just what I'd learned on a kind of a hobby level. And I just worked really hard. And the team I worked with, if any of them are listening to, were absolutely phenomenal. And I don't mean technically phenomenal. I just mean as a unit, we worked really well together. We all got on. We met up after work. It was just a good team. And they really, really helped me to learn IT and what that means in terms of, communication skills. And something you said as well in terms of how to communicate. I was quite good at that point in communicating with customers. So on the service desk, I worked up pretty fast to being a team leader. And then I went to be a service desk manager and a global service desk manager. So I worked my way up relatively quickly. But it was just from working hard, dedication, no family and kids at that time. So you can do that. And then I took on a global service desk manager role, and the first conversation I had with the director was, can I implement ServiceNow globally? So that was, I think we should do a podcast on this maybe, because I've got some interesting learnings. But implement ServiceNow globally, that was my first touch point. I think that was Eureka. Was it Eureka?
Okay,
might have just been
fairly
going to
early
Eureka.
on. Yep.
It might have been the one before. It might have just been upgrading, I forget. But yeah, that was Eureka, and I kind of just fell in love with the platform. This sounds really sad, doesn't it? Because I started off technical, begged and pleaded to go into a technical role, and then started doing more people management. When ServiceNow came along, it allowed me to fall back into a bit more technical and more consultancy. So I was talking to the business about their requirements and also doing some of the technical delivery, and I absolutely loved it. Shortly after, we had one of our partners at the time was Fruition Partners, which is coincidentally how I met you. So you came in as a partner and helped us do some discovery stuff.
Yeah.
Then I joined Fruition Partners. The interview there was interesting. I went for not like you. I went for a technical role through and through. And the interview was more. It was more of a gauge of my personality, and God knows how, but I made it through based on my personality. And previously I'd worked with the likes of you yourself.
Do you tend to find, because of these kind of like small circles around ServiceNow, that it tends to be the people that get hired at partners are people that you already know? Is it like, it's a fairly small circle, isn't it?
That is a good question, right? And I was only talking to someone about this the other day, that a few years back, it was very much like that. And, like yourself, there's lots of partners about, but you kind of know people at each partner, right? But anyone that's kind of new into the industry in the last few years, that won't be the case, I don't think, because it's not as small community as it once was. I think there's still an element of that, but it's certainly not as abundant as it was before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the interview I actually had, I remember Paul Cash, it was at the time, asked me, what can you offer the company? And I said, well, I can tell you 100 ways how to get it wrong. And it was kind of, well, that's part of consultancy, right? So I did Fruition Partners. I started off as a technical consultant there. I worked my way up to team leader there. That became DXC, as you know. And then I went over to another partner where was more kind of bespoke application development, so I did that. And then I decided, and do you know what? And this was, so I was kind of in a lead technical architect capacity then. And COVID hit, and it kind of hit hard, like for most people. But, you're at home for what felt like 2 years. I know it wasn't, but it felt like 2 years, right? And I'd always had this kind of itch I needed to scratch to go and do my own thing, to go and do contracting. And that had been going on for years, even before ServiceNow times. And I just decided, look, COVID's hit. It kind of told me that you've got to kind of seize the moment and make some movements for yourself and put some dedication to more hard work in. So that's what I did. And I've been doing that for just over a year now. Absolutely loving it. And multiple different projects I've been working on, all interesting.
Yeah, all varied.
Yep. All varied, yeah. And I'm currently in a kind of a lead capacity / architect capacity at a particular partner right now, and that brings us to where we are. That's my journey.
So quick, it was actually, yes. I do have a question for you. So, do you feel that you're happier being pigeonholed into doing...
No, I don't feel happy being pigeonholed.
Doing technical consultancy, doing the actual work and implementation itself, rather than design and architecture? Would you rather that work doing design, handing it over to TCs to do the work, or... Are you rather, get your fingers dirty sort of thing?
No, right. This is the reason why we do a podcast together, right? Because if it was just me talking, I wouldn't think about things like that. So I'm glad you asked that question, and that's one thing I want to make very, very clear. So I come from, like I said, kind of a service desk manager background where I had to, like you, I learned ITIL, and I did many of the intermediate courses of ITIL. So my background, like yourself, is process. So I find I can flick between process and technical quite naturally.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you were to give me a set of requirements, say just go and do them, I couldn't do it without challenging, right? Not to say I'm going to sit there and challenge it. If it's a perfectly good story and reasonable, you're not going to say anything, are you? But I absolutely love getting involved in the process side, understanding what people are trying to achieve, why they're trying to achieve it, not just doing the technical side. Don't get me wrong, I love getting my head in some code. That sounds a bit weird, but I do love that. But no, I do like the process side, and I like the design side. I think every project that we embark on, there should be an element of design. Again, another podcast I'm fearing make a note of that. But there should be an element of design, and I love doing that as well. So to answer your question in a really waffly way, is I enjoy it all, and I'm quite lucky I can kind of turn my hand to it all, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that's obviously benefit of being a contractor as well, I guess, isn't it? You can do that all-rounder sort of role rather than something very specific.
Yeah, that's it.
So, Russ, from what we've learnt then, what are your 3 key learnings about your professional journey?
This is an interesting one. So what do I want? So anyone that's listening to this, what do I want them to know or understand? I want them to know. I would tell anyone that's thinking about going to the land of ServiceNow or on their journey already, I would say to absolutely think about soft skills. It's not all about technical ability. Now learning is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's some good YouTube videos to watch. Plug there. But I would also say, it's about soft skills as well. And I think it's something you mentioned is, learn how to be comfortable in what you're talking about technically, but also learn how to listen to the customers. Quite often I've sat there and people will just impart knowledge or say, this is the way it is. It's great. This is the way the out of the box is. That's fantastic. That's what we're there for. But we're also there for to understand what the customer wants and apply that to ServiceNow. And that means we've got to listen and we've got to have those soft skills as well. So that's number one.
Yeah, very key. Yeah.
Number two, I would say dedication and hard work. Things. And I have to tell my kids this as well, actually. Things don't just fall on your lap. I think if and I can put this in context for coding. So, for example, if you've got a particular bit of code that you're working on, business rule or, I don't know, script include or widget or something, and it's just not working, it's that tenacity to keep going until you either work it out or you're able to find other avenues to work it out. Stack Overflow, community, again, YouTube plug, but that tenacity to keep going and kind of not give up. So I would say that. I mean, we've all been there. I hope we've all been there anyway. Until I've been there at 11 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning and can't sleep because I'm thinking that one line of code is doing my head in. Why will it not work?
Yes, but,
and I've been known to get up
in
and
the
just
same breath, it's about knowing when you stop. It's almost just as important to know when to ask for help.
Yeah. There's that balance. Yeah, you can't keep going and then kind of get lost in the ether, but you do need to have a certain level of tenacity to try and work it out. Okay, so that's my number two.
Okay, yeah.
That's my number two. My number three was actually going to be, well, it will be, is to enjoy it. Is to enjoy doing what you're doing. I'm not sure how you deliberately do that, but you can put there's ways and means that you can make things fun. But I genuinely enjoy doing what I'm doing, and if I didn't, it'd be quite a painful experience. But
yeah,
I would
it's a
just
really
say
good point
enjoy
actually,
it.
because a lot of the time in IT, especially IT jobs, people do it because they know they're good at it, because it's comfortable, not because they enjoy it. I think that's a fantastic reason for anybody out there who is looking to apply for any ServiceNow position. If you genuinely have an interest and find it enjoyable to work with, then it's going to make life a lot easier.
Yeah, and it kind of works with something that you said right towards the start of your journey, is the money was good, right? And I think if there's anyone out there that goes to interviews for ServiceNow or any other roles and they're not thinking about how much is this paying, you know what I mean? Come on, you don't go to an interview without knowing how much he's going to pay you, or at least if you do, you go there slightly annoyed that you can't ask that question inside the interview.
Yeah, oh yeah, you absolutely want to. Yeah.
So yeah, from your point earlier, yeah, of course the money needs to be good, but I would say it needs to be more enjoyable is more important. It's definitely more important to me anyway. So enjoy 100%. It. That's my third one.
Yeah. So we got, just to summarize, we've got the core skills. We have the hard work and dedication. Dedication. And we've also got the enjoyment. Enjoy your job.
Yes. That's my three. Fantastic.
Well, it was great to learn about your journey and what you feel is important for those who are looking to get into the same line of business that we are.
So if I guess if anyone's got any questions about journeys or on a similar journeys, or perhaps just wants to share their journey with us, maybe we could read them out next time. We could do a section, couldn't we? Next time we'll read out people's emails, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah. Dispel the myths.
If you've got any questions or insights or any topics you want us to cover, just give us a shout. And I guess we'll wrap it up here, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, just watch out for those pigeonholes. That's all for today's podcast. Thank you for listening, and if you want to get your question answered by the Service Ducks, get in touch through talktotheduck@service-ducks.com, or just use one of the links below.